There's a communication between the gut and the brain through something called the vagus nerve, which is very technical. But your gut actually sends 80% of the message to your brain, and the brain sends 20% of message to your gut. So which is really the second brain. Really, I think maybe the gut is the first brain and your brain is like the second.
Welcome to the Bountiful podcast. I'm Shan, and this is a space for curious, thoughtful conversations about what it really means to live a bountiful life. In a world that often rewards more, faster, and louder, Bountiful exists to slow things down, to explore joy, resilience, creativity, and the small choices that shape how we live every day. Each episode is a conversation with someone who's thought deeply about life, work, health, money, relationships, or purpose, and what they've learned along the way. If you're looking for ideas you can actually live with, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. In this episode, I'm joined by Cheryl Sew Hoy, founder and CEO of Tiny Health, a company helping people understand and improve their gut health at every stage of life. Cheryl started Tiny Health after her own experience as a mother sparked deeper questions about how early gut health shapes lifelong well-being. We explore the gut-brain axis, what really matters when it comes to building and restoring gut health, and for expecting parents, the first 1,000 days of a baby's life and how to give them the best start possible. We also talk about entrepreneurship, joy, and my personal favorite, not taking life too seriously. Cheryl, welcome to the Bountiful podcast.
Hi, Shan. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, obviously, for hosting me in your house and in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
How long have
Thanks
you been?
for flying here all the way from New Zealand.
I mean, it's just a little thing I seem to do all the time.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't know my family's from New Zealand.
I did not.
I married a Kiwi.
You married a Kiwi?
Yeah.
It was very nice to hear his accent.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a wild story, and part of the podcast, I'm a bit of a fan, and I'm going off script, but it sort of goes with the territory of what we learned this morning. So I'm a bit of a fan of you end up where you're meant to be as long as you're following the right path. Mm-hmm. And what's fascinating is, so this morning you emailed me and you're like, do you know my husband's family are New Zealanders? No. Did you know that they're the first Chinese immigrants, or some of the first Chinese immigrants to New Zealand? No. And did you know that they, were involved in gold mining? And so my town that I live in New Zealand, in Cromwell, is obviously one of the gold mining towns of New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And so how cool is it that I'm here? And on top of that they're actually visiting at the moment.
Exactly. Their first time here.
First time?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, the universe just
collides
all together.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here on the Bountiful podcast. What does it mean to you to live a bountiful life?
It's a full question. To live a bountiful to me means full, right? And I think I have a very full life right now, but in a good way, right? I think when we had 2 kids, my husband was like, it's not chaotic enough. Because he grew up in the family of 3 and I did too. And he's like, 3 will make it more bountiful.
You're like
so to
2
speak.
startups.
I know exactly. And we have 2 companies too. So to me, when I had my second, I was done. But then, what changed that was I didn't want to live till I was 80 and then regret. You will never regret having a kid or another kid, but you might regret not having a kid, right? And so that was what made me, actually the turning point was when my daughter, my 7-year-old, 2 years ago, her letter to Santa was wanting a baby sister. She didn't want any presents or anything, but all she wanted was a baby sister. So at that point, I'm like, okay, my husband really wants a third and my daughter really wants a third. Okay, I'm the kind of person who, I want the people around me to be happy and fulfilled and joyful. To me, that gives me joy. That brings me inner joy. So for them to see how much they wanted a third, I'm like, okay, I'll have a third. And truly now I have a third. 4 months ago, he's just brought me so much joy.
So you have 2 boys and a girl now?
2 boys and a girl.
She didn't get her little
She didn't
sister.
get it. Yeah, we did a gender review right here. Actually, we reviewed his gender, and she cried. She's like, Mom, you're gonna have a 4th. I'm like, no, I'm truly done. I'm 42. But she was like, the next day she came to me and she's like, Mom, I love him anyway. So to me, family is everything. And that gives me a bountiful life. But also, I can't truly, I fulfill my purpose of life without doing the work that I do. So I think tiny health really is that life's work, I would say.
Yeah.
So families first, and then the purpose and what I'm doing and creating in this world, tiny health, what I'm bringing to the world is truly the two of it gives me the bountiful life.
So can you share a little bit about your upbringing and background?
Yeah, so I grew up in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, which is the city. And I came here through a government scholarship when I was 18 and went to Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, studied there, did engineering. And this is through a government scholarship and from the Malaysian government, and didn't go back. I just stayed here, worked here, and then, yeah. Growing up, I grew up to a mom who was a businesswoman, is what we called her, when I was growing up. She's always had her company, and she'd work from home as well. So she had a little office in our home, and now this is the norm, right? The office annex as part of the house. So I always seen her kind of running her own company and was inspired by that. So I think I really got my entrepreneurial streak through her. And in fact, it started when I was a little kid, just like, I don't know how old I was, maybe 6 or 7 years old, selling my parents' junk at the flea market, really, and learning the art of sales, really, because my mom told me and my dad told me, if you ever want to start a business in the future, you need to be good at sales because you're going to have to convince people to buy your product, right? And that was really what I learned when I was 6 and 7, convincing random strangers why they should buy my dad's old tie or, just junk, things they didn't want. And I sold everything in 2 weekends. And the kind of the pride of making money and really understanding where money came from and why it's used to buy things, the value of money. Not my parents didn't really teach me those things to have me be so focused on finances, but it's really to learn the value of money and how hard it is to earn money, really. But that kind of sparked my interest in at the time, entrepreneurship was not really a word that I knew, right? It was like business, right? And so that grew into helping my mom with her catalog business because she had a bunch of different businesses and she was getting rid of her catalog business. So then from that, I had to get rid of her inventory as she was closing her catalog business, where you get a catalog and order from the catalog. And so then I recruited one of my junior, schoolmates to help me carry. He was a guy, and I would go door to door to people's offices to sell inventory that she was trying to get rid of, to, starting a business in high school, I just started so many ventures in school. So I was really inspired by my mom's kind of business ventures. And then here I am starting my second venture funded company.
So tell me about Tiny Health and what sparked the idea and what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So Tiny Health, in short, is an at-home gut health test. Yep. And we have a vaginal test as well. And you get a box like that at home and a little swab that is pretty easy to just take a sample of your poop. So a lot of people are like, what is, how do you get your gut health sample? Is it blood? Is it urine? I'm like, no, it's poop, right? Because your poop comes out of your large intestines.
As a mom, you're very used to talking about this.
Changing diapers.
Yeah.
And Tiny Health, people think reflects the baby because we did start with the baby gut test that wasn't in the market before. I can talk more about that and why. But Tiny also represents the tiny little invisible microbes in your gut. There are 38 trillion microbes living in and on us, different microbiome sites. So when we say microbiome, there's the oral microbiome, that's the vaginal microbiome that your baby passes through when they're born vaginally, if they're born vaginally. There's the gut microbiome, which is, you hear about gut health, skin, everything, right? So these microbes are essential for our immune system. There's different functions in each microbiome site. So microbiome tests the gut, and then we have a vaginal test as well. But it's truly because of my 2 different births. It kind of was born out of my 2 different birth experiences with my kids. My daughter was born by a C-section 7 years ago, and she ended up having eczema, some allergies, gluten and dairy intolerances, all kinds of things. And that was when I really dived into the research and found out all this literature around the first 1,000 days and how their immune system, their lifelong immune system, in fact, is trained by these microbes. So the imbalances in her gut in early life are contributing to these early life chronic conditions that can also manifest in metabolic health issues later, autoimmune conditions, mental health issues, the whole spiel. So I looked into it and found out that there are ways you can course correct. And so when I had my second child, or I was pregnant with him, I was like, what if I had a second C-section? I really want to course correct. So I started the company a week after he was born. I had a magical home birth with him. So I had a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after a C-section. And just that magical moment really inspired me that I had to start this company. And my third was also born at home, VBAC.
Yeah, nice. So one of the reasons, several reasons why I wanted to talk to you, obviously you've been incredibly successful in your career, and then also gut health. Like, you've sort of become a bit of a beacon of hope for families that, want their babies and mums who want to be really healthy. And so can we talk a little bit about gut health, what it is, why it matters, and then we'll get into the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So gut health, again, gut microbiome, gut health, you've heard of, is the most studied site, because I mentioned there's many microbiome sites, right? Because it's so accessible through the stool. That's why you get it from poop. Sounds gross. And also, you go back to the early life microbiome, and this is where Tiny Health started. We started in focusing on maternal gut and vaginal health, because the mom is passing her vaginal microbes through the birth canal, and then gut microbes, some fecal fluid during labor and birth actually gets into the baby's mouth when they're coming out and swallowing, because the baby actually is sterile in the womb. There's no microbiome, no fetal microbiome. Yeah. And they first get the first colonization from the mom's vaginal microbes and then gut microbes. And then through breast milk, mom is continuing to transfer her gut microbiome to her baby. And that early colonization in the infant gut is really crucial. So there was no test in the market that was measuring the infant gut. And the infant guts, what's healthy in a baby's gut is really different from an adult gut, because their only diet is breast milk at that point, or milk, or formula. So it's very simple. And I knew how important gut health was, especially in that first 1,000 days, which starts in conception, actually. So in the mom's womb, for prevention of chronic conditions like eczema, asthma, diabetes, all kinds of things, right? And so even now as adults, 80% of our immune system is in our gut. There's a layer of immune cells behind that gut lining in your large intestines and small intestines that protects.
I didn't know this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you say leaky gut or gut inflammation, that refers to that gut lining. People think of it as having a hole, but it really is that cell weakening and allowing pathogens that may come through the food or your digestive system to get into your bloodstream and cause immune reaction. So that's why food sensitivities or bloating issues, a lot of chronic conditions stem from the gut lining being weak, or there's pathogenic bacteria in your gut that is leaking to the bloodstream. So the gut health, that's why gut health is in a way a trendy word now. There's a lot of supplements and all that focusing on gut health, but it's, there's a lot of snake oil at the same time. How do you know if the claims are true and all that, right? So we aim to be the company really demystifying all the things around gut health and truly being science-based or evidence-backed. Mm-hmm. So everything that we put out there is linked to a PubMed article, a peer-reviewed journal to show, if you have those imbalances in your gut, what can you do about it? Because we want our reports to be very actionable.
Yeah. I came across research where it said that it's like the second brain. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, and plus the saying, right? What does your gut tell you, right? It truly is, because there's a bidirectional relationship between the gut and the brain. So have you heard of the gut-brain axis or gut-brain connection?
Yeah.
Dr. Emerin Mayer wrote this book, Gut-Brain Connection. He's now our medical advisor.
Well
he
done.
just came on board a few months ago. So, because he was very floored in how our test is able to show you some of the gut-brain axis metrics like GABA production and breakdown. GABA is the calming compound that's produced in your gut to make you feel less stress, or you can handle stress a little bit more, and gives you that Zen feeling. So we can measure that in your gut. And then serotonin, which is also that compound that helps you feel less stress. 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. Wow. Dopamine, another really important compound, if you've heard of it, is that motivation compound, right? You're like urged when you get up in the morning to like do stuff. That's 50% of it is produced in your gut.
It's really interesting because I think a lot of people think those chemicals are produced in your brain.
Mm-mm. I mean, some of it are, but most of it is produced in your gut. And there's a connection, right? So like there's a communication between the gut and the brain through something called the vagus nerve, which is very technical. But your gut actually sends 80% of the message to your brain, and the brain sends 20% of message to your gut. So which is really the second brain. Really, I think maybe the gut is the first brain and your brain is like the second, in a way. So that's all to say that if you have gut imbalances, if you don't have a healthy gut, it may make you depressed, or, there's a lot of mental health symptoms that is connected to dysbiosis in the gut. And the other way too is bidirectional. So if you have mental health issues, it could impact your gut. Right now, the studies are emerging. It's not like, it's bidirectional, meaning that there's not a causative route. So if you don't get enough sleep, it could impair your gut and all that.
Can we talk a little bit about the role of diet in this, and like how you have a healthy gut and healthy diet so that you've got the right chemicals going to your brain, so then you're like, it all sort of feels like a cycle?
Yeah, for sure. Like, for example, if you don't have enough GABA production in your gut, I mentioned earlier, the Zen-like, compound fermented foods. If you eat more fermented foods, it can encourage the beneficial compounds to, encourage more of that specific gut bacteria to flourish in your gut and produce more GABA, for example. And then like fiber is really important too. Have you heard of short-chain fatty acids?
Yes. I don't know what they do though.
I know it's a big word, right? And I don't want to get too technical into it, but if you are the biohacker kind, or you're into wellness, you should know about short-chain fatty acids, and specifically butyrate function in adults. It's quite crucial, and they're kind of like the energy that's produced when fiber is digested by the gut bacteria. So a lot of fiber that you eat, you hear about, fiber being great for the gut health and things like that. So when you eat, we go back into biology a little bit, when you eat, a lot of the food gets digested in the small intestines, which we don't measure. It's not, the stool test is not measuring the small intestines, but that's a lot of how protein, carbs, and all that is being digested. Fiber actually isn't digested. Like a lot of fiber we eat kind of goes through the gut undigested, and it reaches the large intestines for the bacteria to eat. So fiber is actually food for the bacteria, not for us. Really interesting, right?
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah, it's really, so when you eat, like you're kind of feeding your microbes, which is kind of philosophical in a way.
This might sound dumb, but I always just thought that you had to eat fiber so that you could poop well.
Yeah, which is true.
But I didn't know why.
Yeah, so there's different fibers perform different functions, right? When you eat like the roughage, like fiber that are like celery or like the bulking agent, you can't digest it, and it's there to encourage certain bacteria to like help aid with the digestive tract and motility of it, right? Then there are different fibers like inulin that are prebiotic fibers, like leeks and broccoli and things like that have inulin to aid with bacterial function to help you produce more FOS, GOS, complex sugar compounds, so that they can turn fiber into butyrate. So coming back to short chain fatty acids. And when you get butyrate, which is the energy that's coming out of the fermentation of fiber, that helps your gut lining strengthen, like keeps it strong. Because your gut lining and that small intestines and your large intestines is just made of one cell wall. And that cell wall is held by these tight junctions. So you imagine like a fence, right, in your house to keep away pathogens or bad folks. Like, you want that fence to be strong. So the butyrate is kind of like the workers painting that fence and repairing it every year, making sure that fence is strong, because there's wear and tear, rain and weather and all that, like postal workers banging through it and things like that. So you eat fiber to produce butyrate compounds to keep that gut lining strong, the fence, to your immune system, because your immune system is right behind that fence. So just hopefully that's kind of a good
really good
explanation.
analogy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. When we think about bacteria, which is mostly in our gut, there could be fungi or yeast as well, but hopefully not. There could be viruses passing through. When we say microbes, right, microbiome really means bacteria, fungi, maybe parasites, but we actually don't think all parasites are bad, but you shouldn't really have a lot of it. Most of what's in your gut is bacteria. And when people think of bacteria, what do you think of?
Dirt,
Well, or E. coli, right?
Yeah.
Bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
You don't think of good bacteria, like bifidobacteria.
I guess, yeah. When I think about like good bacteria and those sorts of things, I mean, I try to eat like a lot of like pre and probiotics, and that you've got good. I think my level of gut health is like maybe level like 2, and there's might be like 10 levels or something.
Yeah, but most people kind of don't know when they think of, especially with COVID, right? It's like everyone thinks of germs, right? And want to kill germs with antibacterial soap and hand sanitizers, which we don't use here at all, because we're, in killing bacteria, a lot of chemicals they don't recognize just bad bacteria, they also kill the good bacteria. So a lot of gut health issues is because of the depletion of beneficial bacteria and functions. So when we talk about gut health, a lot of people are focusing on, like E. coli or C. diff or Klebsiella, and how do we kill bad bacteria? But really, we need to evolve our understanding of gut health, that there should be the right balance of good bacteria and bad bacteria. So for adults, for sure, but in infancy is even more pressing because so many infants that have colicky symptoms, sleep issues, eczema, allergies, they have zero beneficial bacteria in their gut because their moms don't have it, their dads don't have it. So there's nothing to transfer. There's no beneficial bacteria to transfer to their infant, and they're getting more and more sick. When I say sick, not like acute sickness, but more chronic conditions, which is a modern Western lifestyle condition, right? So this is the problem that I noticed with my own kids and its connection with gut health in early life, that this is why our mission is really to create intergenerational health through course-correcting early life microbiome imbalances. But then we now actually have moved on from babies to adults and longevity in the longevity space, because people want to live longer and healthier. So it's really important for the parents to also focus on their gut health.
Hey, it's Shan here, just taking a quick pause in this episode. Each week we share a bountiful newsletter with ideas for living a more bountiful life, along with a few thoughts that I've been sitting with. If you'd like to join us, you can head to bountifulworld.com. We'd love to have you as part of our community.
Should we talk a little bit about maybe pregnancy, and say if there's any people here who are trying or are pregnant, like what should they be doing at the moment? And I know it sort of depends, but what are some of the things that they can do to prepare their gut and, I don't know, their fluids for when they're going to have their baby?
Gut microbiome and vaginal microbiome too.
And maybe we should talk about the vaginal microbiome as well, because it's not a common topic, I don't think.
For sure, yeah, and it's so important. If you have any vaginal itching or odor that's not normal or pain, then definitely do a vaginal test. We sell one here too. It has implications on fertility as well. So many people today can't easily get pregnant, right? And it might have roots in gut health and also vaginal health. So if you don't have an acidic environment in your vaginal microbiome, which is brought on by lactobacillus microbes in the vaginal. Your vaginal microbiome should be 98% lactobacillus crispatus, ideally. And if not, there are probiotics that are, oral vaginal probiotics you can take, or suppositories you can do to get it back into a healthier state. And that is important to help with fertility and pregnancy. And if you do get pregnant and don't have an acidic environment in your vaginal canal, that could lead to preterm labor as well. So there's pregnancy risks associated with an unhealthy vaginal microbiome.
And then what is the infertility side of that? Because that sort of blew my mind when I heard it as well. Yeah.
Similar mechanism. If you don't have an acidic environment that allows for disruptive vaginal microbes to inhabit, so streptococcus, BV, which is bacterial vaginosis, BV, is a vaginal infection that keeps recurring in women. So if you have any itching or any odor, get it checked. It might not be yeast infection. People always think that's yeast infection. So a lot of doctors too may be over or misprescribing antifungals when in fact it's a BV infection. If doctors, conventional doctors would prescribe antibiotics to then kill BV, where our approach is to not kill. Again, back to earlier points, you can change the community through a lot of pre and probiotic treatments that are available in the market. It's not regulated, but and not all supplements are equal. I would say some are higher quality than others. So we do, in our reports, we recommend brands that we've seen clinically changing the community to a healthier state. So the vaginal microbiome is really important if you're thinking about having a child, a healthy pregnancy, and just even through menopausal phase, which is really popular right now in the wellness community, you can do something to really reduce the dryness and the pain and all that as you age.
That's interesting as well. So many threads there. Should we start with maybe antibiotics and
I guess maybe we can go back to the pregnancy bit. So because I mentioned about the vaginal microbes. So then in pregnancy, people always ask us when should they test? And I would say preconception. If you want any kids in the future, test now, because it took me 6 to 9 months to restore my gut. When I tested my gut, it's like if I don't have that beneficial microbe to pass on to my infant through a vaginal birth or breast milk, then I'm not passing it on. So in our data set, we see 30% of vaginally born breastfed infants don't have any beneficial bacteria, and they have eczema and all that. And the parents come running to us and like, this must be wrong. How I did everything right. But then when we got the mom and the dad's guts, they don't have any bifidobacteria. So if you've had any antibiotics, anytime in your life, and you don't take care of restoring those missing microbes, because remember, like antibacterial soap or antibiotics, they broad spectrum, they kill everything, right? So if you're not, consciously restoring them, they could be gone forever. And so that's one of the modern, I think, crises that we are seeing in gut health today, which may then lead to chronic conditions, is this overuse of antibiotics. And so if you've ever had any antibiotics in your life.
Well, they give them out like lollies, right?
Exactly.
I know that's a bad thing to say, but it's kind of true.
It's true, especially for kids. Yeah. When you take kids to a doctor, sometimes, it's a viral infection. Like your infections are mostly viral, but there is a small chance it's bacterial, but doctors just hand out antibiotics, just take it just in case, wipes out the kid's microbiomes and never restores it, right? That's a problem. So if you're thinking about, kids in the future, do a vaginal test, do a gut test, men and women too, because that's contribute 20% of their microbes to the infant.
Interesting.
In the first year of life. Yeah. That's an interesting fact that I recently also learned. Moms on average contribute about 70% at birth through a vaginal birth. If the mom had a C-section, she's only contributing also 20%. So that may have the same impact to the infant in the first year of life if you ended up with a C-section. So if you have a good baseline microbiome with healthy microbes, then diversity is really good for you, being exposed to more nature and pets. guess what? Pets bring E. coli type bacteria too. But the diversity is what makes a resilient gut, which means resilience means ability to bounce back from adversity, right? We talked about that early with even kids. So your gut should be resilient as well, bounce back from adversity, but you need to introduce adversity to the gut for it to bounce back. So a gut that's completely deficient of E. coli is not healthy either. So you need like really good defense systems, which is your bifidobacteria, your butyrate function, and a few other ones as well. But if you're lay audience, bifidobacteria and butyrate function is really important. Archimenzia is important for metabolic health as well. So if you don't have these functions, then you may not have you may have a weaker gut. So when you're exposed to E. coli or a diarrhea when you're traveling, that may really impair your gut for a year or two, So you want a resilient gut.
And then what are some of the foods that people should be eating? I don't know if it's as specific as that, but are there food groups, or how do you have a healthy gut?
Yeah, I mean, the right balance, right? There's a lot of emphasis, obviously, on fiber. There was a recent study coming out of Stanford from the Sonnenberg lab. He's a really famous researcher in Stanford that showed that fermented foods actually has an outsized impact on the diversity of the microbiome. And again, more diverse, the more resilient the gut is, more so than fiber. Fiber is important too, but fermented foods is even more important. And it's not the quantity necessarily, but the consistency. So every day, if you eat a little bit of fermented food, that could be yogurt. I would recommend Greek yogurt that isn't full of sugar. So like the flavored yogurt is not great from Danone. That's actually not great. So we do Greek yogurt here. Kefir is even better than yogurt, has even more probiotic substances. We eat a lot of sauerkraut, kimchi. We brew our own kombucha. So anytime you can do fermented foods is really great for your gut. But beyond that, yeah, fiber. And not just like people always mistaken, I eat a lot of fiber, but it's the diversity of fiber. So you want at least 30 different plant-based foods in your diet every day if possible, every week if possible. We counted once and we were at like 55. Yeah.
What about like meat and carbs?
Yeah, really important too. So I don't want to get into the whole, argument of there's people who are all into the carnivore diet and then there's the vegans. And I think these extremes are not what we're meant to eat. We believe that human beings should eat a wide variety of diet that's balanced, right? So protein is important too. Like, protein has amino acids that's important for overall health and well-being. So we are actually pretty meat-heavy household here, but the problem with meat today is where it's sourced from.
There's so many hormones in it, right?
It's hormones and also antibiotics that were injected into these cows. Parasites, all kinds, right? Yeah. Because they're raised in factory farms, right? So we actually look out for, we source our meat from regenerative farms, and they're grass-fed, grass-finished, and not eating corn, because a lot of corn is GMO in the US. 98% of corn, 95% of corn, soil, and wheat are GMO. Yeah. And that causes issues in the gut too. So it's more important where you source your produce and your meat. Yeah. But fiber, like I mentioned earlier, fiber is not digested in the small intestines, but it's there for the bacteria to eat. Protein, however, is digested in the small intestines. So if you don't have enough fiber to balance the protein, some protein doesn't get digested and reaches the large intestines. And if it does reach the large intestines, it encourages unfriendly bacteria to flourish, actually. So if you don't have enough fiber to balance the protein you're eating, that could cause gut inflammation, gut issues too. Yeah. So balance is the key word here.
Can we talk a little bit about the difference between C-sections and vaginal births, and then if people do have a C-section, like what can they do? Yeah,
and that was my story, right? So this is really not meant to make people feel guilty that, it's already, I'm sure a lot of moms are trying for vaginal birth. I don't want to call it natural because it's like, what is unnatural and what's natural, right? Sometimes C-sections are life-saving. Like in the case of my child, my first child, she was breached, and I tried for vaginal breech birth, and she just would not come out. And this is when I knew her being breached. There was a high likelihood of C-section. I read through all the literature. So babies born by C-section have a higher ratio of bacteria in their guts that are more antibiotic resistant because of the hospital environment. In the hospital, because you do use a lot more antibiotics, so bugs there tend to be more resistant, and that ends up colonizing the infant gut, right? Because you're just exposed to the equipment there and all that. And then also the baby's not passing through that vaginal canal, not getting the vaginal microbes of the mom, not getting the fecal fluid from the mom, which then gives them the healthy bacteria. And the mom, because of the operation, they're taking antibiotics. So the antibiotics gets to the infant and kind of really messes up their gut. So C-section born kids do have more eczema and allergies and asthma and other health issues later in life. So when I read that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what can I do? I don't want my kid to have asthma. And not all, right? So then I read this paper that breastfeeding is the number one modifier of a C-section gut, because you're continuing to transfer your gut microbes to baby if the mom has a good gut health to begin with. But breast milk also has other properties like HMOs, which stands for human milk oligosaccharides. They're prebiotic fibers. So I primed you earlier that the fact that we can't digest a lot of fibers, right, is for the bacteria. Same thing with breast milk. A third of breast milk is made out of these prebiotic fibers called HMOs that the baby's gut can't digest. It's there for the bacteria, the healthy bacteria. So if the baby was born without the bifidobacteria, this healthy bacteria I'm talking about, then a third of breast milk is just gone and wasted and not turned into energy, which is, you want it to turn into another short-chain fatty acid. It's called acetate, which is really essential for the immune training of the infant. So that's kind of why, like I was like, okay, then I breastfed my first child for 18 months, and I was trying to figure out, and I gave her kefir at 6 months. I was doing all the things. I did a procedure called vaginal seeding after her C-section, which means I put a swab in my vagina during the C-section operation preparation. And when she was brought out, like my midwife swabbed her to mimic the vaginal route. So I did all these things to, because you mentioned what someone do, right? So if you have a healthy vaginal, I would get it checked. I would see if you have a healthy vaginal microbiome. Then you could be a good candidate for a vaginal seeding procedure if you did.
And so you rub it all over the baby, and basically it almost mimics them coming out of the...
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a couple of studies have shown that babies swabbed with that looks more like a vaginal microbiome than or vaginally born baby than a C-section born baby. So I was really trying to course correct, and it's possible to replenish that missing bifidobacteria through some probiotics in the market now, but it's really dependent on the strain. A lot of issues with probiotic supplementation in infants and adults is that people just take it off the shelf and they may not giving the right strains to their child or themselves. So we like to test and not guess, because we can tell you exactly what your baby needs or is missing what you need as well. So you can buy the right strains in the probiotic supplementation for what you need.
And can we talk about people who can't breastfeed and have to use formula? What sorts of things can they be doing?
Yeah, formula is a big topic too, and certainly I've had a friend who had breast reconstruction and just could not breastfeed. I would say a lot of formula in the US though has corn syrup, which is not great, and there are more emerging studies showing that corn syrup may be indicated in metabolic health issues later in life and things like that. So I would look for something that's based on lactose and grass-fed milk if possible. It's really hard to find formula without seed oils, but the second ingredient in a lot of formula is vegetable oil, which is inflammatory. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to find good formula, but the number one ingredient that's missing from formula that is a third in breast milk is HMOs, as I mentioned, the human milk oligosaccharides. These are the milk sugars that feed the bacteria, right? So most formula-fed infants also don't have that bifidobacteria because they don't have the fibers.
And so for people that are sort of trying to problem solve, I think you've mentioned like kefir can be good.
Kefir,
and then donor milk.
Donor milk for the HMOs. Yeah, again, but there are actually now supplements, infant supplements with HMOs that you can add to formula. So that's what we have in our action plan. If you are formula feeding, ideally you can get some breast milk in there. Again, nothing replaces the volume of HMOs in breast milk or donor milk. And if without the prebiotic fibers, your bifidobacteria, the healthy bacteria is going to colonize less in the infant gut. And without the healthy bacteria in the infant gut, then the E. coli and the unfriendly bacteria will colonize in the infant gut and cause issues. So that's why you want HMOs and the bifidobacteria to colonize in early life.
So can we talk a little bit about, you've mentioned that, I sort of feel like supplements these days are everywhere, and also that everyone's got a supplement business. So can you talk about, if people do need to supplement, how does Tiny Health figure out what the good supplements are and what the bad ones are? Like, which ones are the ones that are actually good for you, and say like what they are in the tin is actually what they are, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, supplements is a whole can of worms too, right? So I can only speak to supplements that really help with gut health. Yep. There are other supplements that you can take for like, zinc levels or omega-3 or vitamin D, because we don't get enough sun these days, right? And so, but actually vitamin D and omega-3 is actually also important for gut health, right? There's connections there. No, like supplements are not regulated in the US. I'm not sure if it is in New Zealand.
I don't think so, no.
Right? And so who knows if we're just making expensive urine, what they call, So we actually care a lot about supplements efficacy. So we only recommend brands that are clinically backed, where they have clinically backed ingredients, meaning that ingredient has clinically shown to improve some gut metric. Yeah. Or from our own data, we see that probiotic really colonizing the infant gut or the adult gut and creating some sort of beneficial functions.
Which you're doing through testing.
Which we do through independent testing. Yeah. We don't really publish that data because we don't like to name and shame companies, but we would just not recommend that brand, for example. But supplements are hard, right? I truly think that like a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh yeah, I'm taking a probiotic. But I'm like, how do you know if you need them? I don't, in fact, I don't take a probiotic myself. I used to, but now because I had no bifidobacteria, but now I have about 2%, which is healthy. So I don't need it anymore.
Because you tested.
I tested, yeah. So I do like the idea of, if you're going to spend that money and take it every day, it's like kind of not, it's a thing you have to remember to take, right? I would want to be guided by what my body really is lacking and what it needs. It's multifactorial. Supplements are one dimension, but your diet is so important too. A lot of people just, especially in America, they like the magic bullet of taking a pill to solve their problems. And here we always tell them, you need to complement your supplement with diet to sustain and maintain it, because are you going to take that supplement forever? Maybe, if you really need it. But ideally, you're taking supplements to troubleshoot a problem short term, and then you're maintaining it through diet. That would be my philosophy.
Can we just take a quick look at like what is good versus bad gut health?
It comes back to at the core of it, gut inflammation. Gut inflammation is mentioned the gut lining being weak and allowing things to go through and immune system reacting to it. So you want that to be strong.
What are some of the symptoms that someone might experience if their gut's out of balance?
Fruit sensitivities, like my daughter had gluten and dairy intolerances.
Yeah, I'm gluten and dairy free.
That's one of the signs, and that could have its roots in early life as well. But even now, like if you restore your gut functions, you could feel better, and maybe you can eventually consume some of these foods, right? That's also like a whole topic, right? Because our food supply chain is very compromised these days with monoculture farming, single crop farming, and nutrients are depleted from our foods today. So that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, I grow all of my own, I try grow as much of our own food like in the summer season in New Zealand. And we notice that when we're home, it's very like our water is not treated, like it's got a UV filter, but it comes from the river and it's very nice. But grow our own food. And when we're home, we are like, really feel like at peak sort of energy levels, peak health, feel like very nourished. And I've even, it sounds a bit woo-woo, but I feel like our water is actually alive. Like I can feel that it's alive and I feel like very hydrated. Often when I'm not at home, I can feel that like my food doesn't feel nourishing.
Especially in the US.
It kind of feels a little bit dead.
Yeah. I mean, truly, like our water is so treated with so much chemicals, right? And we do an RO filter, which is like the only filter that can filter out microplastics, right? Because microplastics is a big issue here and it can compromise your gut health too. So it's just all the things. I do feel like since I got into building this company and in the wellness, because we are in the wellness space, I'm almost like a soldier, always defending my family from all these potential health threats and chemicals and like even skincare and soaps that we use and all that, right? So coming back to good gut health, right, or bad gut health, again, the problem with humans today is the loss of beneficial gut function and gut bacteria, truly, from overuse of antibiotics, compromise, even skincare and food, kind of like nutrient-dense food and things like that, where we're just not eating that anymore. We're eating stuff that are depleted, right? When you don't have beneficial functions and a good defense system in your gut, because remember that immune cell is behind that wall, and when you have pathogenic exposure, so if you go on a trip, travel, right? Have you heard of the traveler's bug? I'm not sure if you got it.
I've been to Asia. I've been literally everywhere, and I did it in quite quick succession. So like, got traveler's diarrhea in Africa, had Bali belly, got something in Mexico and also South America, and then for the next like 5 years, I was brilliant. Like I felt very resistant in those places. Like I didn't get
after that first round.
Yeah,
interesting.
Which was fascinating for me.
So that exposure could mean that you had a good baseline gut to begin with, and then you got exposed, and then your gut was even more resilient. However, if you don't have a good baseline, which I didn't have when I did my recent trip last year, I went to Bali for a whole month because we got married there. We wanted to take the kids back there. And then I got 1 day of Bali belly diarrhea. My whole family got it. Their guts were resilient, mine weren't. Yeah. And so until now, so I didn't have any E. coli type bacteria in my gut, and then I got 30% from Bali. And until now, I have 7% a year after. So some of these bugs that you may acquire from traveling can stay in your gut for a long time and cause issues. So I have skin flares now. I have a lot of gut health issues myself running a gut health company, but I knew I got it from Bali because I tested my baseline before, right? So bad gut health could be high pathogenic bacteria in your gut, weak gut lining, or bacteria that is there. You have these bacteria to like really strengthen the walls of your gut lining, to like help give food to that gut lining. So we can measure all that in our test, and we'll tell you what you need to do to strengthen all that aspects. And if you have high pathogenic bacteria like me, I have the toxic kind as well, because in our test we can measure, because E. coli, they're not all bad. There's some neutral ones, maybe even, should I dare say, beneficial E. coli, but there are some really toxic ones, and I had the toxic ones from Bali. And so I'm taking something called an SBI binder that binds toxins to like get rid of it. So there are things that you can do to like, help with that.
I heard somewhere, I think I listened to a previous podcast where you were explaining that like the gut does regenerate or something within like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so actually, because I mentioned the small intestines regenerate a lot quicker. So within 2 to 5 days, because that's where your nutrient absorption happens. Enzymes is pretty, like fast moving environment. Your large intestines regenerate between 4 to 5 weeks. Don't quote me on this, but I believe that's the latest kind of what I've studied. So it takes time because it's where water is absorbed and a lot of bacterial function is there. But yeah, 4 to 5 weeks, that it's a good thing, right? It means that there's a chance for you to really like eat a good diet, and within 4 to 5 weeks, you could see a change. But it takes time, right? It's not like overnight.
Is there one thing you had to unlearn about your own health to better support your kids?
Sleep. So if you can biohack anything, if there's one thing, you want to focus on that you There's so many things you can do. There's one thing, even before gut health, I would say fix your sleep. It's so foundational. If you don't fix your sleep and you repair, you take all the supplements and do all the things, it's still not gonna be the most impactful. Your sleep is really, so like, I learned this because I sleep late because I work. And through the Aura Ring, I learned that I'm not getting deep sleep that's restorative and helps repair my cells and liver function and all that. And then I get woken up by my kids early, right? So I don't get the REM, so I don't get the memory regeneration and the brain health, which I need for work, right? So with this ring, it's really been impactful that now I sleep early so that I get enough deep sleep, at least an hour and a half, and I get at least an hour and a half of REM. So I'm kind of like on earplugs, even with an infant, eye mask and all that. So I hack my sleep like nobody's business.
Awesome. Quick fire questions. What, in your opinion, is the most underrated fruit or vegetable?
Garlic.
Interesting. What's your favorite cocktail if you drink?
I used to drink a mezcal, anything with mezcal and grapefruit in it, but now I do mocktails.
Worst meal that your parents ever made for you?
Instant noodles, which I love actually. Guilty pleasure. Terrible for you.
What word describes your life?
Full.
What are you most proud of?
My kids.
Do you have any tenets or principles that you live by?
Don't take yourself too seriously.
What's one thing that has mattered in your life more than you realized that's not sleep?
Oh, I was going to say sleep. Oh, my family, really.
And then what's something that didn't matter as much as you thought?
What people think of you.
That's a common one. And then what is your advice for your 25-year-old self?
So many things. Don't microwave plastics and don't eat too much seed oils because that's ruined my gut.
Good one. And for someone, so the final question really is for anyone new to gut health, where should they begin? Because it's very overwhelming.
Do a test and get educated there. Just learn what's in your gut and what's not in your gut that you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming on the Bountiful podcast and sharing your incredible sort of wisdom and brain with our audience. And I'm so excited by what you're building. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, leaving a review, a comment, or subscribing really does help. It allows me to keep growing the podcast and having conversations just like this one. I really appreciate you being here. I'll see you in the next one.